Okay, I'm going to talk really fast. It's late at night. We all want to go home. We have other party business to do. But I knew there would be a big crowd here tonight. We have an election next week. So I wanted to just drop a big bombshell in here and cause a lot of problems. I mean that in the best way. Brothers and sisters, we're believers. We have churches on every corner. The Republican Party platform says that we are against abortion. And so why is it that abortion is still happening in our state? I just want to throw some things out there for us to think about so we can try and be a little bit more strategic this session and next year and how we communicate to our legislators and how we communicate to the governor. My organization is called United for Life. I work on public policy, but I also do personal evangelism training and apologetics. And I work with young people. We go onto campuses and talk to young skulls full of mush, a lot like Charlie Kirk. But tonight we're going to talk about public policy. Let me rewind the clock a little bit to 2022 when the Dobbs opinion overturned Roe v. Wade. That opinion signified a giant victory for the pro-life movement, but it wasn't all good. We tend to focus on the good part, that we got rid of Roe, but we don't realize that when we cut the head off that hydra, we had 50 other heads spring up in all 50 states because of the way this opinion was worded. The Dobbs opinion said that the Constitution does not prohibit the citizens of each state from regulating or prohibiting abortion. Everybody was celebrating because now we can prohibit abortion. Okay? The 10th Amendment says that criminal law is the purview of the states. The federal government only has 17 things it can do. Criminal law, rape, murder, bank robbery, speeding, all that stuff belongs to the states. It always belonged to the states. For 50 years we bowed down to this federal idol and let them get away with it. So it was great that we overturned it. But there's a bad side of this. There was no mention in this court opinion of the right to life and equal protection of the law, which is mandated in the 5th and the 14th Amendments. As you recall, every state is supposed to protect every person's life, liberty, and property. And you can't take somebody's life until you convict them and find them guilty first. You have a legal right to your life, and abortion violates that concept. Furthermore, all the states are supposed to provide equal protection of the laws in their state. So if you have a law that says you can kill these kids, but you can't kill these kids, that's not protecting them equally. So any kind of discrimination against kids in the womb is unconstitutional, and the court didn't mention any of this. So this is where it was really bad. So while we're busy celebrating this, everyone is forgetting that the federal court said, states, just go ahead and keep regulating abortion like you've been doing for 50 years. And that's why we've got blue states, we've got red states, we have a little bit of regulation, a lot of regulation, but we still have abortion in all 50 states. Now, what is this designation, folks?
License to kill.
Exactly right. If you have the 007 certification, that is your state-sanctioned license to kill. That's why James Bond in every movie kills several people, and he's never on trial for murder, is he? He's allowed to kill people. So when you have a license to kill, it's an official sanction by the state. The state says, you can kill, it's okay. Well, what we have in our law right now in Oklahoma, in Arkansas, in Texas, in Georgia, in all these conservative states, is we have a license to kill that was put in there. And by the way, it's a pro-life license to kill. I'm going to show you now, this is the Arkansas statute that bans abortion, put in by pro-lifers when Roe v. Wade was overturned. This statute has 3 parts, A, B, and C. A is the part that it bans abortion. It says it's unlawful to produce an abortion by any means. That's fantastic. Paragraph B says if you do this, it's a felony. That's the criminal part of it, the crime. If you do this, here's the punishment. Now, if that was the end of this law, it would be perfect. The war in Arkansas would be over. We would have nothing left to do. But the problem is paragraph C. Nothing shall allow the charging or conviction of a woman. So every single woman in the state of Arkansas has a license to kill her own preborn boy or girl with 0 penalty. No risk at all of prosecution of anything, not even a wrist slap. So what we have is folks are ordering their abortion pills online. They come in the mail in 2 to 3 days. They basically deliver their kids into the toilet, and this is what abortion has become. Now this is by design of the abortion industry. Okay, is anyone buying Playboy magazine anymore? No. They're out of business. They don't even print it anymore. So would it be fair for me to say that no one's looking at porn anymore? Right? The industry shifted how it does business. The same things happen with abortion. You can't point your finger at abortion facilities anymore and say, look, no one's going in anymore. Yes, but they're still getting abortions. The numbers are still really, really bad. And now we can't even put a hard number on it because there's no reporting mechanism. So we're left to sort of do voluntary surveys. One organization that did a voluntary survey was the Society of Family Planning, and they found that by the end of 2023, they were seeing 8,000 women a month were buying abortion pills and having them mailed to them. And that's only in the red states with bans. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas. That's where these numbers are coming from. And these numbers were volunteered to the surveyors. So how bad is the number really? I'm telling you, it's going through the roof. It's a major problem, and we're at the point now where no one wants to talk about it. We want to pretend like this battle is over and we won. So abortion really is legal in Arkansas. Yes, there's a statute that says you shouldn't do it, but there's another statute that says, go ahead, we won't do anything. That's like, yeah, we know the stretches of road where they don't enforce the speed limit and people drive as fast as they want. It is available to people. That's the problem. So what we had here in 2023 is these three representatives. You had Jim Womack, Wayne Long, and is it Josh Miller? I forget his first name. These three gentlemen ran a bill that was going to close this loophole. What they wanted to do with this bill a few years ago was strike out paragraph C. That would have solved the whole problem and ended abortion in Arkansas. If anybody wanted to do something, they'd have to leave the state, or they would risk a criminal penalty, which makes them way less likely to do it when you have a law that agrees with your conscience and says don't do that. That's great. And then they clarified that all the other provisions of the criminal code apply in the case of abortion. This was their entire bill right here. So what happened with the bill? It didn't even get a hearing. So I've talked along. He's willing to run it again. So you will have a bill again in 2027. The question is, will they hear it? Not unless something changes. Not unless we start demanding that they hear it. We have to demand more from the Speaker of the House and the leadership. It's not enough to just author a bill because they know how to kill these bills by not even hearing them. So the problem is the lobbyist influence, right? We know what a lobbyist is, right? They sit out there and like good angels and bad angels, they're talking into the ears of the legislators, telling them what to do on these different issues that they're paid to tell them what to do. So right after Roe gets overturned, you have a major consortium of lobbyists descend on all of our state capitals to make sure that abortion is going to continue to be available. So there was a letter that went out to all state legislators right here in Arkansas, and I'm going to quote from it right now. Here's what it said. As national and state organizations representing tens of millions, we do not support any measure seeking to criminalize or punish women, and we stand firmly opposed to include special or such penalties in the legislation, and turning women who have abortions into criminals is not the way. Now, I didn't put that in bold and underline it. That was in the letter that went to the legislators. Okay, so this came from a very powerful lobby organization with tens and tens of millions of dollars behind it. Does anyone know what that organization was? Go.
Right to Life.
You're exactly right. Of Arkansas. Miss Mims was the one who signed the letter. She's no longer the head of the organization. I haven't met the new president yet, but I'm looking forward to that. So when these people speak, the legislators listen. The question is, why? Why would they not want there to be any criminalization under the law? Well, here's where I have to be a Christian and I have to assume the best. I think Mrs. Mims is a decent person. So, I wouldn't punch her in the face or yell at her, but I would insist that we talk about this and try and figure out why you're doing this to us, to these children in Arkansas. And to the best of my ability, I think that they believe that all women who get abortions are victims. So by interviewing her, and last Saturday I got to debate the National Right to Life chairperson for them. Her name's Linda Bell. She's hardcore, never punish the woman, ever, under any circumstances. And so, but by talking to her and all these different people, to the best of my ability, trying to be honest and steelman their argument, I think this is their argument. First, they believe that victims should not be prosecuted. Completely agree. Next, they believe that women who choose to abort are victims. All of them. Therefore, women who choose to abort should not be prosecuted. And then they go a step further and they say, let's not even pass a law. We don't need to enact a law that would allow us to prosecute anybody because they're all victims. So this is the line of logic to the best that I can understand it. So let's just quickly sort of talk about that for a few minutes and ask what we can do about it. Should victims be prosecuted? No. Of course not. We can agree on that point. Point 2, are women who choose to abort victims? Here they make a category error by assuming that every woman who seeks an abortion is the same, that they are all somehow victims. I'm completely willing to admit that a large number are victims. I don't know what that number is. It could be 10%, it could be 90%, it could be somewhere in the middle. That's not the point. The point is that they're not all the same. And certainly we don't want to prosecute victims, but guess what? That's the way our legal system works. We don't prosecute victims as much as we can help it. We assume everyone is innocent until proven guilty. We have to be able to build a case before we prosecute anybody. That's inherent in our system, which is a great thing. Okay, so let me first of all, I don't want to give up this point. Even though I could give it up for the sake of argument and still be in favor of having a law, I don't want to just let them get away with claiming that everyone's a victim. That is a myth, and I want to blow it up for you right now. Okay, let me just show you some social media posts that I myself have sucked out of places where I've been in conversation online. Here's a few examples. I don't care if it's alive or not, it's getting aborted with a smile on my face. Republicans are morons. I'm a happy aborter. No victim here. We are not victims. The only victims are the women being robbed of their right to choose. Okay, and I could go on and on. There's thousands of these you can find online. There's a great website called notavictim.org, notavictim.org, and it's a repository of thousands upon thousands of videos and statements where these women are making it obvious that they know exactly what they're doing. Now, some will say, well, this is just anecdotal. Okay, fine. Let me show you a scientific study. Okay, I'm going to cite from a peer-reviewed study in Perspectives on Sexual and Reproductive Health. They looked at over 5,000 abortions where a survey was completed beforehand. And here's what we're going to find. Now, first of all, MIMS and the Right to Life folks are saying all women are victims. Let's define terms. What's a victim? A victim is someone who has been coerced into doing something against their will, through the threat of or coercion through violence or psychological abuse and things like that. A victim, classic example, would be China's one-child policy. Oh, you have a second child? Our soldiers are going to drag you out of the house and go force abortion upon you. That's a victim. A sex trafficker who's being controlled through drugs and psychological and physical manipulation and has handlers. These people are true victims. But is that what we're talking about? Is that what's usually happening here? Okay, let's take a look at the results of this survey. This survey found that in only 2% of cases, women felt that they had been pressured. What does that mean, pressured? It means that they felt like someone else was more interested in them getting an abortion than they were themselves, and they felt somewhat uncomfortable with their choice. So, you would have to equivocate on the word victim. You would have to redefine it from meaning coercion to just simple pressure. And only 2% of women are saying that they were pressured to get an abortion. So what you're seeing here is that this victimhood narrative is just absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Of course there are victims, and we care about victims. We love them. We want to protect them under the law. But they are not 100% of the cases, or even 90% of the cases. So now let's go back and look at their argument again. They're really not all victims, right? We get that. So we don't want to prosecute those who are. But this logical leap to not passing a law at all. So when I was having this debate last weekend with Linda Bell, I said, Linda, let me just grant to you your point that pretty much almost all of them are victims. Let's just say 97% of them are victims. Okay, you win. I'll give it to you. Now, would you ever, in any circumstance, tell me when you would support a bill on the books that would make it a criminal act to knowingly seek to kill your own little boy or girl in the womb? When would you ever be comfortable offering a penalty? She refused to answer that question. She wants to keep all penalties off the book all the time. She doesn't even imagine a world where we should do that. So this is what we're up against. This is a very loud voice at the Capitol influencing our public policy. It's time for us to speak to our legislators the truth, that this victimhood narrative is a myth, and even if it were true, we still need a way to prosecute people who know exactly what they're doing. Now, the other thing that these legislators are going to tell you when you start pushing for that is they're going to say, oh, well, we just can't be dragging all these women through the court system. It'll be a public marketing propaganda nightmare. It'll look awful. And we don't want to punish all these innocent women by dragging them through the court system. That's not the way the system works. Nobody wants to prosecute a bunch of people. We don't want to throw thousands of women in jail. Of course we don't want to do that. But guys, it only takes one or two to make an example. The district attorney, whoever's going to be in charge of prosecuting the case, is going to have a mountain of evidence. There's going to be Facebook posts and videos. There's going to be Insta, Snapchat, YouTube stuff. There's going to be emails back and forth. There's going to be boyfriends encouraging and mothers involved. And there's going to be receipts of the chemical orders. And there's going to be all kinds of mountains of evidence. And we are going to go after somebody. More than one somebody. Because there's more than one person involved in this decision. And this could make Fox News national news. Oh my gosh, they're prosecuting somebody in Arkansas. Guys, it'd only take one, and everybody else would go, oh, I guess they really are going to enforce this. And then people start to behave. But that's where we've got to get if we want to end abortion. If we want to get from thousands every year to hardly any every year, there's got to be consequences, or we'll never get there. Okay, so let's summarize this myth. First of all, victimhood is a myth. Second, our courts assume innocence. We're not going to be dragging thousands of people through the court system. Only those who are clearly guilty and we have a mountain of evidence, because guilt has to be proven. But guys, justice demands that we agree with God's law. We need to get aligned with our Constitution and our natural moral law. What does God demand? It says it over and over in the prophets. He demands justice and mercy. Both. But we live in a world right now where we just want to extend unmitigated mercy upon anybody, whether they deserve it or not. In God's economy, justice comes first. You have to know that you're a lawbreaker, and when you properly humble yourself and repent, then you receive mercy when it's appropriate. You don't force it on folks. And right now, our law is not reflecting God's just nature, which is both sides. And don't forget that our Constitution requires it. The last point I want to make here is that the law is the most effective teacher and the most effective deterrent in our culture. People are going to do stuff when it's legal and available. And we know that people will violate their own consciences if it's legal and available. But when the law says, you shall not do this or else, and your conscience was already telling you that, and now they're in alignment, that is the strongest teacher there can be. People behave themselves when the law agrees with their conscience. And we need to get back to that. That's critically important. So we really don't have enforcement of God's law and the Constitution in the blue states, obviously. But what I'm here to tell you is we don't have it in the red states either. What we have is pro-choice, pro-abortion states. You can go to the ballot, you can check Democrat or Republican, and right now in all states, you're still getting abortion. I don't know how many of you get the Babylon Bee, which makes fun of the news headlines. But in the last election cycle, they had this one that said pro-lifers are excited to choose between a moderate amount of baby murder and a large amount. Guys, I'm here to tell you it's about the same amount whichever lever you pull right now on this particular issue. So we need political repentance. I want to remind you that God doesn't pervert justice. He doesn't show favoritism. He doesn't show partiality. Right? This is what He requires of us. And He even says, woe to officials who enact unjust laws. So here's your Senate, 83% Republican. Here's your House, 81% Republican. You have super majorities of pro-life Republicans in your legislature. They ought to be able to do anything they want. So do they really want to abolish abortion? Clearly not. So the problem we have here is that this is a large collection and they can all hide behind each other. Now you're here because you're activists. You know who your state representative is. But if you go down here to the Walmart parking lot, grab 100 random people and say, who's your state rep? You might get one if you're lucky. Ask them who a Kansas City chief is. They will be able to name one. Ask them who the governor is. They'll all be able to tell you who the governor is. Because the higher up the food chain you go, the more the cult of personality kicks in. We know who the true leaders are. People don't think of their state reps as leaders, which means that they can do whatever they want because you don't know who they are and they don't care. They're not afraid of you. There was a song, a hymn that we used to sing when I was in church growing up. It was called Everybody Could. Everybody said that anybody could do the important things somebody should do. Everybody knows that anybody could do all the good things that nobody did. You know the phrase, right? Everybody's job is nobody's job. You have a collective or you have an individual. Groups of people are super not effective at getting important things done. You have to have a ringleader. You have to have a shepherd. You have to have a team captain. You have to have a coach. Somebody has to say, follow me, let's go. And nobody's doing that on abortion right now. They just want everyone to forget about it. So we are going to have to get a Speaker of the House or Governor Sanders. If anybody went to school with Sanders or your best friend went to school with her, someone's got an in. We have to find the end. We have to get to her. Because if she said, I want this done, it would be done this week. You know she has the power to call a special session of the legislature and tell them what to vote on. If she said it in her State of the State speech and talked about it and said, I'm demanding, she could just say, guys, you're in special session tomorrow. I want Representative Wayne and Biller and those guys, I want that bill on my desk by the end of the week so I can sign it and we can stop abortion in Arkansas. Do you think it would get done then? Better believe it would. It would absolutely get done then. And even if they wanted to balk and play hardball, all she would have to do is say, yeah, well, I'm not signing any of your legislation until you do. Remember, she has the same number of votes as 2/3 of the entire legislature. That's power. And she needs to use it, or we'll never get there. It all comes down to people with name recognition, true authority, and duty to lead, right? The buck stops with her and everybody knows it. And she has sworn to uphold the Constitution and the laws of Arkansas. She's not upholding the Constitution to the best of her ability, so help me God, if she's not trying to stop this bloodshed in her jurisdiction. Right? So it all comes back to strong leadership. She needs to call a special session, use that bully pulpit. She needs to be supporting those Republicans that will do this and opposing the ones that won't. All right, so this is it. I'm going to end with King Josiah. You guys remember King Josiah comes to power at a time in Israel's history when Scripture tells us they were making their children pass through the fire. They're sacrificing their born children to Molech. So how did Josiah stop that? What was his plan, his strategic plan? What did he do? You can find it in these 2 chapters. Well, he didn't obey the priests of Molech. He didn't launch an education campaign to teach people that the preborn were valuable human beings and just educate them in the schools and stuff for a while until everyone agreed, and then he would move forward. And he didn't simply regulate child sacrifice by passing bills that said you can only sacrifice them on Fridays and Saturdays on state-approved altars of child sacrifice that are safe and legal. We don't want you doing back alley sacrifice. We want you to do it in a state-approved temple. So he wasn't regulating it. That's not what he did. He didn't send out pollsters to see how many priests of Molech do we have versus how many priests of Jehovah do we have and wait for a moral majority. He didn't do any of that. He wasn't waiting for the culture to change. He changed the culture. He pulled everybody together. He had all of his leaders, all of his officials, and he said, guys, we're not killing our kids anymore. Thus says Jehovah. This is our law. Tomorrow I'm enforcing it. So if we catch anybody tomorrow, you're in trouble. Here's my executive officer standing behind me. We're ready to go after anybody who does this again. And in a few short months, years, he had it wiped out in the land because he exercised leadership. So that's our model. That's what we need to do. We need to start exposing these myths and these lies to everyone that will listen, and we need to go after leadership. We need to be hounding the Speaker of the House. We need to try to get to Sarah Sanders. Without their leadership, it's not going to happen. I have a book up here about a lot of this. Feel free to grab these or make a note of it. You can get them on Amazon by Kindle and all that stuff. I'll hang out. I'll answer questions afterwards. But let's stay in touch. Let's help each other. Let's keep this movement not dying, but moving forward. It's still winnable, especially in a state like Arkansas. So thanks for having me. Pleasure.
You.